Andrea was living with a dark family secret.
You just shut up and you go with it because you're terrified.
At the tender age of 6, she had suffered the unimaginable brutal sexual assaults allegedly at the hands of her own uncle.
What do you say to people who say, how can you remember something from that young of an age, 5 and 6 years old?
It's stamped in your brain. And so when this huge thing started happening to me, you can't forget it. Believe me, I wanted to.
The nightmare had finally ended when her Uncle Tim finished his construction work on the family house. But now Andrea was left to cope with the haunting memories and psychological trauma that left even deeper scars. Andrea started harming herself by cutting her own flesh.
I was cutting myself a lot, and it got to the point where no one could figure out what the root of this was, and I wouldn't tell them.
Her psyche so damaged she even experienced hallucinations.
So I had, voices telling me to hurt myself, to hurt other people. And thankfully, of course, I only listened to the hurting myself because I feel like that was the only thing I could control.
But the deep incisions down her arm finally caught the attention of her 7th grade volleyball coach.
It's kind of hard to play a sport and have cuts down your arm, especially a sport where the ball hits your arm every other moment. So she knew.
That coach intervened, telling Andrea's parents about her wounds. They promptly sent Andrea to a therapist.
They had no idea what you were struggling with.
I had kept it to myself for so long I wasn't gonna stop keeping it then. I still didn't trust anyone yet.
And that trust didn't come easily. It would take a year of counseling before Andrea would spill her deepest, darkest secrets.
My counselor to this day has never heard the details of what happened to me because she hasn't felt that it's essential for me to disclose them to her in order for me to heal from them.
After revealing enough to the therapist, Andrea finally broke the devastating news to her parents.
When I was on a volunteer trip to Costa Rica when I was a sophomore, and I texted my parents and I said something happened to me and that is why I am the way I am. And I didn't tell them who did it. Couldn't yet.
When you did see them, what was their reaction?
It's hard to think these things happened under your own roof and without you knowing. And I can't begin to imagine to this day what my parents must feel about that. I don't really want to imagine it. I imagine it's not pretty.
After more than a decade, the crushing weight of this horrible secret was lifted.
They believed me, and that's the biggest fear, is that no one's gonna believe you, no one's gonna hear you.
But Andrea still did not reveal exactly who violated her trust. Would her alleged abuser ever pay the price for the innocence he stole? After hearing Andrea's harrowing story, it was finally pieced together who she says the perpetrator was.
Somebody found some of my personal writing where I utilized this metaphor about a firefighter and fire and burn and arson and all this, and so they pieced it together on their own.
It was a moment years in the making, with firefighter Tim Durbin, Andrea's own uncle, unmasked as her alleged abuser. Her therapist reported the alleged sexual assaults to police, but a terrified Andrea refused to press charges.
I did initially tell them, if you report this, I will say it's not true. I won't do it. I can't face him. I can't do it. I won't do it. And then I realized, I felt like I owed it to myself, but also so much to anybody else this could be happening to.
Finally, Andrea had a change of heart. She bravely goes to cops where, for the first time, tells her version of the full story, revealing all the alleged details of her shocking ordeal.
How old do you think you were, or do you have any idea?
Like 6-ish. I was just playing with my hair and complimenting me. And then he had me perform oral sex.
When you say oral sex, Andrea, what do you consider oral sex?
He compared his penis to being like a lollipop, like candy or something.
Even though the alleged abuse happened years before with no forensic evidence and no witnesses, prosecutor Kyle Rohr says the allegations against Tim Durbin were stunning.
I've been a prosecutor for 20 years, and I believed her story.
What did she say happened?
He sexually assaulted her on multiple occasions. All of them occurred in her bedroom and all of them involved sexual intercourse, oral sex, things you typically think of when you think of rape. Nothing you should ever think of in the context of a 5-year-old child, ever.
Now, more than a decade later, would this teenager find justice? Up next, cops bring Uncle Tim in,
Help me understand then why Andrea would tell me that you raped her.
where he hits the hot seat,
I can't even say I ever remember hugging her.
and you'll never believe what he says.
Nothing that she could misconstrue as a child.
You know what? I mean,
You know, if it did happen, it's not the end of the world. It's not like you killed somebody. I mean,
no, but